Hi guys, how we doing? We're back on the 67 Hail channel. Not in front of my green screen. I've decided to come up the stairs into my own bedroom because this video is going to be a little bit different. Mainly you've heard the views of me looking ahead to the big game tomorrow now against Rangers. We've also heard from David in our live preview that we did on Wednesday night. Check that out if you've not already seen it. But we're going to go a step further on today's video and get the thoughts of everyone at 67 Hail. That's me, David, John McGinley and the returning John Reid as well. So what are we thinking ahead of this game? Let's start with the latter, John Reid, and he tells us how big he thinks the game is in the context of our season.
Well, it's a big game. It always is a big game when we play Rangers. I mean, it's maybe not as big as the game against Ferencvaros in the Champions League qualifiers, because that really was one of the biggest games of the season. So maybe the second biggest so far, but it's still important, of course, because it's against Rangers, because of the situation at the top of the league, because we hope that with our players that are going to be out, we can turn in a big performance. So I'd say so far it's probably the second biggest game of the season, but by the time we get to kick-off, it'll turn out to be the first biggest game of the season, as it always usually turns out to be against Rangers.
I think it's massive in the context of the season. I think if we can get the 3 points against Rangers at the weekend, I think you put them under a level of pressure that personally I don't think they've actually proven they can deal with. There is 3 more of these derbies to go. We've seen how many twists and turns there are over the course of a season, so you don't obviously want to get too definitive about whether this will win us a league. Of course it won't, but what it will be is a massive step for us. I think a defeat would set up something we really don't want in a narrative. I don't think any of us can be bothered to be listening to. So I think it's big in a few senses. So if we can get the win, then certainly a fantastic start to the season.
It's a massive game. There's no getting around it. I think that given the start that both sides have had the season, unbeaten in the Scottish Premiership, I don't think you can deny that this is the first chance for both teams to really land a significant blow in this ongoing title race. I think for Celtic, there's a added element that we lost the last derby between the two sides at Celtic Park and will be out to prove that we're still the top dogs in Scottish football. Now, we know that as Celtic fans, but there's a bit of confidence about Rangers this season. I don't think you can deny that either. A little bit of swagger back about how the way they're playing, the way they're carrying themselves, the way they're making noise about their trophy chances this season. And what better way to burst the hype bubble than with a thumping derby victory. That's what I'm looking for. We've done it in each of the last 4 seasons in the first game of the season. And I think we can, with the right team and the right performance, why not? I'm not scared of Rangers. At the same time, I hope Neil Lennon's team respects them and comes at the game in the right manner this time. But it's a massive game. There's no getting around it. It's not title defining. There'll be a lot of pundits maybe telling you that win, lose or draw on Saturday. But it is a significant step towards that. So yeah, it's a massive game. I'm looking forward to it.
Yep, me too, John. I think it's a really important game for us. Obviously, it's only the first derby of the season. There'll be a second, a third, and even probably a fourth if COVID doesn't halt the season at all. Touch wood, it doesn't. But this is a big one. I feel like Celtic are really at a crossroads at the moment under Neil Lennon. You only have to look at the fractured nature of the support at the moment. Some are up, some are down, some are really on edge. I'm one of those people, as you probably found out over the last couple of weeks and months. But I think this result could go a long way to determining how we fare this season. I think if we were to get a really negative result and to lose the match, things could spiral out of control, and I think there'd be a lot of people calling for Neil Lennon's head. That's just the way I see it. On the flip side, if we win this game, we're going to be well clear of Rangers with a game in hand, and I think everyone is starting to think this is a team that can win 10 in a row, and they're going to do it. So, massive game. It's an absolutely massive game. There's no way to sugarcoat it. It's huge. In terms of on the pitch stuff, looking at who's going to play, team selection kind of issues, one of the main ones is about our new signing, Diego Laxalt. So guys, do we think that he'll start?
I don't think Neil Lennon really has too much of a choice here after his comments when Laxalt signed. He said he's ready, he's fit to play, he can go right into the team, and he sort of hyped him up a wee bit for the derby. I think he's got to play. I wouldn't be too certain giving Greg Taylor the shot. I think Laxalt has more experience. He has, a good track record in big games. He's starred at World Cups, so you put him in there. If he's ready to play, you put him in.
I think you have to play Diego Laxalt. I think he's a big player and this is a big game. Why wouldn't you? And people may argue he might not quite have the fitness, but I don't really buy into that. I think Milan train at an elite level. He's been within their squads, their matchday squads, at the start of the season, although he didn't actually get on the pitch action. But he's not a mug, and it's a disservice perhaps to the hard work that he's put in at Milan over the last couple of months. Even though he's not been playing, they were expecting him to be some sort of slow coach who can't cope with the pace and intensity of this match. I think he can. I think Neil Lennon will play him, but if Greg Taylor's on the team sheet, I'm not going to be crying about it, because I don't think Greg Taylor's actually done as bad at the start of the season as some people suggest. I would certainly prefer Laxalt, and I think that's because Rangers have a threat on the right hand side, and I think the best way to counter that threat is to have one of our own, and I think Laxalt provides that, and I think he'll be a bit more of a curveball for Steven Gerrard and his players. He's an unknown quantity for them, no matter how much scouting they've done over the international break on him. So I'm looking for him to start the game and give us a strong debut performance.
I think that Diego Laxalt won't be involved. I think that Neil Lennon will go for Greg Taylor. I think Greg Taylor's tried and trusted, and the manager likes him. He's played him, I think, nearly every game but one this season. He's maybe not everybody's favourite player, but he's solid enough, and obviously the manager likes him if he keeps pinking him. I think Laxalt will get games this season, but I think it's maybe just a wee bit too early to play him in this game. I think if it was in a couple of weeks' time, he'd play him when he's in more time to get used to his teammates, but I think it's maybe just a bit too early for Laxalt. So I think it'll be Greg Taylor playing on the left side for Celtic, and hopefully he has his best game yet for the Hoops, and he helps us on the victory.
Well, I'd be more than happy with that. However, I do think that Laxalt will start. This is a guy who's played in a World Cup quarter-final against the eventual winners, France. He's a guy who's been at Serie A clubs for the last few years. He was in AC Milan's books. Well, he still is. He's on loan from AC Milan. You're not telling me that he's daunted by the prospect of playing Rangers. Even in a normal world with 60,000 fans and that hostile atmosphere, I'd be starting him. But even more so now, the fact that he doesn't have to worry about this massive fixture and all the atmosphere and all the nerves that are associated with that, because it must be tough making your debut in a derby match with a full stadium. I think it's easier now. I don't think he's getting worried by some of Rangers players when he's played against Serie A opposition for the last couple of years. Laxalt will start for me, and he'll have a stormer. There's your big prediction. In terms of other players, the other kind of big main talking point, probably the biggest talking point over the last couple of weeks during the international break, was whether we'll start a certain Frenchman, and I'm not talking about Christopher Jullien. What do we think, guys?
The Odsonne Edouard question is difficult, because unless you're part of the French medical team or the Celtic medical team, or you're pals with them, you're not going to quite know his status at the moment. I think everyone will be keeping that quite close to their chest. I think there's a danger of throwing him into the match before he's ready. If he has had symptoms of this, and there were reports that he was symptomless, but if he has had any sort of symptoms of fatigue, I don't think you can throw up a player who has had a serious respiratory illness into a game that you'll be using his lungs for. I think that hopefully he gets the all clear, but if he doesn't, I think we've got strong enough options to come into the team. But I'm an optimist, so I think he might be alright. Olivier Ncham's been talking about how he's doing okay during an international break, and I think if there's any chance of him at all, if he gets the all clear from the doctors, I don't think Neil Lennon will be bothered about him arriving late in the week into Scotland from France.
I just can't see Odsonne Edouard getting the nod to start. I mean, it'd be too much of a gamble. I would say he's maybe trained very sparingly, if at all, since he's been self-isolating in France, and it'd be an awful rush, really, him coming back, possibly, and then like 1 day's training, even if that, all of a sudden playing. I think it's too much of a gamble, and I don't think he'll be on the bench. Hopefully he'll be back for the game against Milan, but I can't see Edouard being involved at all against Rangers. And we've got League Diswifts, and we've got Patrick Kamal as well, so I'd say that Odsonne Edouard won't be involved in the game.
No, I'm just quite wary of this. Odsonne Edouard starting, it just all depends on how he's feeling. I don't think you can push him right in if he's not 100%, because we've got so many big games coming up that we want him to be fit for. But as well as that, you could ask the same Albina Jetty, because he's not played for a couple of weeks. So if you're not going to play Odsonne Edouard for being out for 2 weeks, why play a Jetty? Why play Griffiths? So if there's any chance at all, I think you can guarantee Neil's going to start him. But it's really all kind of up in the air because you just don't know how Edouard's been doing over the course of this period. He says he's fine, Lennon says he's been active, so it could be the case that Lennon kind of throws a curveball there and just throws him right in, especially with narrative that's been built up about how he won't be fit. So I could see that happening, but if there's any doubt at all, I would put him on the bench.
Yeah, there's definitely some concerns over Odsonne Edouard. We are kind of in the dark. We don't know what's been going on over the last couple of weeks. We don't know to what extent he had COVID, how he was affected, whether he was asymptomatic or whether he had symptoms. So it's a tough one. I guess we won't know until Neil Lennon speaks on Friday. Today, I suppose I should point out at this point that, not giving the secrets away, we all recorded this prior to Neil Lennon's press conference. So Lennon may come out later and say that Laxalt and Edouard are starting or they're both not starting. We're just giving our opinions prior to that. So please be wary of that when criticising us in the comments if we get it badly wrong, because we usually do, let's be honest. Right, guys, the biggest talking point in terms of this whole fixture is the fact that for the first time in Celtic versus Rangers history, it's going to be played with no fans at all. It's going to be a bit crazy. How do we think that will affect the match?
Well, this is the big question about the fans. I mean, it's going to be weird. I think more for people watching the game than actually for the players. I think the players are probably used to it, but now in Celtic have had good results, apart from Ferencváros, playing with no fans. That's not really affected them. I think it's going to affect us all watching the game at home. It's going to be very odd. Usually the Glasgow derbies, 50,000, 60,000 fans screaming and shouting, putting pressure on the referee, going crazy when we score a goal, going angry when we concede one. And that's not going to be there. It's going to be very odd. So I think that it'll more affect us all watching at home than the players. I think the players are probably used to it by now, but for all the fans watching, it's going to be a weird experience. And you can't even go to the pub to celebrate the win afterwards.
The fan issue it's a difficult one, unless you're a professional footballer and you're kind of used to these occasions. You don't really know how much of a change has been from last year, but these players have been playing like this for a couple of months now, so you would expect them to kind of be used to how it's going to feel inside Celtic Park. Obviously, the derby situation would have made it different if it was a full house, but I don't think it's going to have as much of an impact on the game as some people have suggested. I think it's going to be a tight, tense and nervous occasion for the players regardless, because they know what's at stake here. And they know that the reputations are live and die by these derbies sometimes, and there's a lot on the line here, and they'll know that despite there's nobody in the stadium, they'll know everyone's watching on at home. So I think they'll be as nervous in both camps, or as excited or as tense. The butterflies will be rumbling in their stomach, and I think that that's going to have an impact on the game as much as anything, just the occasion. I don't think the lack of crowds might take a little bit of edge out of it in terms of rough challenges and kind of getting the crowd on your side, but for me, I think the two teams doing battle will have plenty of rivalry on the pitch, regardless of the lack of rivalry in the stands.
I think it's going to be a really intriguing dynamic, isn't it? I think it's sort of, you wonder how both teams are going to fare with it. I don't think the teams will collectively sort of have the exact same reaction to it. Every player's different. Every player will react to having no fans differently. You might have some who actually thrive in it. They might want us to sort of be eased into the derby. Maybe some of the new guys, for example. So we'll wait and see how it goes. I think it's definitely going to take something away from the game. But as Celtic supporters, from my perspective, I've been right into every game we've played this season, even without the fans. So I think it will obviously have a sort of effect on the atmosphere that's built up during the game, but in terms of the nerves that you get beforehand and and how big the game is, I don't think it will have an effect in that sense. So be interested to see how the players react. I really just hope that our guys can react better and hopefully raise their game.
So the guys kind of all agreeing there, saying that they don't think it will perhaps be as big a factor as some people are making out. I think it's going to be unusual, but I think both Johns made the point that the players are well used to it by now. It's maybe not going to be as big an issue for them. At Celtic Park, we've been brilliant this season. Other than the Ferencváros game, we've been really good. We've battered Hamilton, we battered Hibs, we battered the Icelandic mob. We've also scored lots of goals against Livingston and other games at home. So I think the team are really confident at Celtic Park, and obviously we're going up against tougher opposition than we have in any of those prior mentioned games, but I think we're going to do the business. Will the game have the same kind of end-to-end ferocious start of usual derby matches? I don't think so. I think so much of that end-to-end stuff that happens in these games comes from the atmosphere and both sets of supporters driving their teams on. So I don't think we'll get that. I think it'll be a little bit more cagey. I could be wrong with that. Obviously, we've seen crazy scores down south over the last month with no fans, 7-2s, 6-1s, 5-3s. So it may be a little bit different, who knows. But I think it will be cagier than we're usually expected to see in these kind of matches. Right, guys, we've reached crunch time. We're approaching the game. How's it going to go? And can you please give me a prediction as well?
I think this match is going to be a pretty close fought affair. I think it's going to be a tight game. I think there's only going to be a goal in it. I think it's going to be very tight in the first hour of the match, because I think these two sides are going to show respect to each other in terms of not going too gung-ho with their attacking. I think Celtic will be wary of Rangers on the counter-attack, or at least I should hope they are. And I think likewise Rangers will be wary of that too, because Celtic are obviously a very talented side. I think that, with the threat that Celtic have off the bench, I think for me after the hour mark, I think Neil Lennon's got a lot more tactical, variety at his disposal, and a lot more talent, international talent, who can win games. If Odsonne Edouard doesn't start the game, you'd hope that he was on the bench. If Albion Ajeti doesn't start the game, you would hope that he's on the bench. You've got Tom Rogic, you've got lots of players here who can come on and change the game, and find space in this latter third of the match. So I actually think our bench could win this game for us, and I'd fancy us to win 1-0. That's my official prediction, 1-0 Celtic, and that'd do me. I hope it would do you, and we can all move forward into the deeper parts of the season full of confidence, having shut Rangers up again.
It's going to be a tough game. Both sides are going to be right up for it. I think they're going to push each other to the limit. But I do think Celtic will surprise some people. I do think we operate at our best when there's a bit of siege mentality and people have been writing them off. There's been plenty of negative stuff written about us and our chances ahead of the weekend. So I do think that'll anger some of the players who maybe think they should deserve more respect going into this fixture, considering our history against Rangers over the last few years. I do think the days of hammering them are kind of behind us, unfortunately. I think they're a better team now. So I'm going to go for Celtic to win this one, and I think we'll win it comfortably enough. I'm going to go for Celtic 2, Rangers 0. Maybe that's hope more than any sort of logic to it, but I just got a wee hunch Celtic are going to come out and really fire Rangers down and get a massive 3 points for the club. So 2-0 for me.
Well, I think it'll be a close game. They all have been against Rangers in the last year or two, since really they appointed Gerrard. The games have been a lot closer than they were when we used to be beating them 4 or 5-0. I think this game will be close. The first goal will be important. If we get it, I think we should be okay. I'm going to eke out a win. If Rangers get it, it'll be a tough game. But I think we've got the players, the ones that are going to be available, that can still cause Rangers problems, like Lee Griffiths, Alien Rousset. There are Callum McGregor. There are players that can cause Rangers problems, and I think that will just about edge a 2-1 win and go top of the league.
Good stuff, guys. 3 out of 3 there, and as you will well know from this channel and the video I did earlier on in the week, I'm going to make it a clean sweep. 4 out of 4, Celtic 1, Rangers 0 for me, and don't be surprised if that goal arrives late on. That's my advice and my tips. We'll be back post-match tomorrow doing the live reaction. Me and John McGinley will be doing that. Please join us for that. If you've not yet subscribed to the channel, please do it. It would be massively appreciated by all the team at 67 Hail Hail. And come on Celtic, let's do the business. Looking forward to it. Let's get to work. Let's get 3 points and put that mob back where they belong. Second best.